could ever be. Don't turn on the lights, cause I don't want to see. Mama told me not to come. Mama told me not to come. That ain't the way to find out. Open up your window, let some air to this room. I think I'm almost choking from the smell of stale.
Oh man, some of those were a little like awkward, but am I supposed to laugh or just feel really sorry for them? Somebody was like, take your shoes off. That made sense there. Well, hey, welcome. My name is Sean. How you guys doing? Great to see you here. Before we jump in, I want to tell you about something we've got coming up in 2 weeks that I love. It's called Terra Nova Tours, coming up on Sunday, June 2nd. And Lyle and I host this about 4 times a year where we throw a free lunch and we've got free childcare and we talk about Terra Nova and what it's all about. So it's not a tour of our facility, it's a metaphor. That's been frequently misunderstood. Like I thought we were just going to walk around the building. You don't need me to do that with you. You can do that by yourself. So this is a kind of a walk through who we are and what we value and what we're all about. And if you've been around Terra Nova for a little while and you're thinking, hey, this might be my church, my community, this is a perfect next step for you. If you've been around a long time and have never come, it is a great next step for you. It is also our pathway to membership, but that's another part of it. You don't have to be like, I don't think I'm there yet. It's actually for people who don't even know they're there or think they're there yet. So you can sign up by writing Tour Me on your Connect card that Ethan tore out so wonderfully for us earlier. And you can sign up on the app if you have the app or online if you're watching online at ourterranova.com/tours. So that's coming up June 2nd. But today we are in part 2 of our series, Mama Didn't Raise No Fool, which we said last week is kind of an aspirational title. Really, it's almost like wishful thinking because the truth is, and we all know this, mamas have raised lots and lots and lots of fools over the many years. Is that not the case? And often in spite of their best efforts, in spite of their best wishes. And so last week we started off talking about really a lot of the foolish things that we've all done, some of the dumb, boneheaded moves we've all made, that in the rearview mirror, in retrospect, we wonder to ourselves, like, why did I do that? Or why did I do that again? Or why didn't I see that coming? What was I thinking? How could I have been so foolish? But can you imagine for a moment if you were the opposite of that all the time? Imagine being like super wise all the time, like in every area of your life. So you're like money smart, so you handle money really well. You always make the genius move with finances. You're emotionally smart. You're always reacting in the same way. You have what Daniel Goleman in his book Emotional Intelligence calls the master aptitude, right? So you know when to bite your tongue. You know how to read the room. You know how to say the thing that most needs to be said in the moment, how to get where people are coming from. And you're romantically smart, whether you're married or not, or dating or not. You handle relationships so incredibly well. You're so good in relationships that the right person actually wants to be with you. We've talked about this a few times around here. Like, are you the person that the kind of person you're looking for is looking for? And you are always that kind of person because you're so relationally smart and you're work smart and career smart and you make the right decisions vocationally and you work hard and you're business savvy and you always make the right call, the genius move, the wise decision. You're kind of like that woman we met at the end of last week in Proverbs 31, the archetypal wise person. You're like that all the time. And that's actually what this series is all about. That's what the book of Proverbs, in fact, is all about. And I hope maybe you've been reading the book of Proverbs over the last week. We gave you a couple of reading plans. It's all about the ability or the skill, the know-how, the practical genius, the street-level genius of knowing and doing the right thing the right way at the right time all the time. And that skill is called chokmah, which is the Hebrew word in the book of Proverbs that we translate into English, wisdom. And it's all about how life really works and the know-how that results in living well the way that life works. And Proverbs is all about this. It's all about patterns, if you will, patterns of cause and effect that are built into the very fabric of the way God made things to be. And Proverbs distills all of these observations and these patterns into these poetic, pithy, often two-line sayings that are really designed to make us ponder and think and chew on them and go, I wonder what that means, and I wonder how that's true, and I wonder how that applies to me. In fact, most of the book of Proverbs, which is a document found in the Bible, most of the book of Proverbs is a collection of hundreds and hundreds of these short little sayings or observations. And just as a side note, these Proverbs are not promises. They are not promises. They are not guarantees. They are not absolutes. Proverbs, rather, are principles. They're principles and patterns of this is how life works most of the time. This is how life works, and if you want to work the way life works, this is how to do it. So I'll give you an example. Proverbs 28:19 says this: those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies will have their fill of poverty. Now, quick question. Have there ever been hardworking farmers who've actually ended up poor and hungry because of maybe things they couldn't control, like drought or economy and so forth? Has that ever happened? Oh, yeah, that's happened. Have there ever been fantasy-chasing dreamers who win $10 million in the lottery? Does that happen? Yes, it does. But this is how life works most of the time. This is life, and this is how life works over the long haul, which is what the book of Proverbs is always talking about, the long arc of life. And as Lady Wisdom observes, the long arc of patterns of cause and effect that dreamers and schemers, always with another get-rich-quick scheme, gonna get a and people who with the work ethic of a farmer who just put one foot in front of the other and they get at it and they stay at it, this is how that plays out again and again and again. And it's no surprise when that's how that plays out. So the Proverbs, man, it talks about it all. It talks about sex and friends and money and business and decision making and parenting and work and spirituality and wealth and poverty and compassion and generosity. And so each week we are going to take one of these key concepts from the book of Proverbs and we're going to pair it up with something that moms say. Momisms, these great momisms, if you will. And one of the things that my mom said all the time, and I honestly don't know if any other moms ever say this, but my mom said this all the time. She would say this: eat your vegetables first. Eat your vegetables first. So my mom took this nutrition class in college, and she was all about it. She took it really seriously, and there were always vegetables at every meal, and I'm talking green vegetables. You know what I'm saying? She was like, corn is not a vegetable. That's a carbohydrate. That doesn't even count. What? Yeah, not nutrient dense. She talked about stuff like this. And so there were green things. I'm talking Brussels sprouts before Brussels sprouts were sexy. I mean, cutting them in half, grilling them, drizzling them with flavor. None of that nonsense. We're talking steamed and dumped whole onto the plate. Just bam, eat that. And spinach and broccoli and string beans every night. And so when, as kids, we would kind of push the vegetables around on the plate, she would always say, eat them first. Eat them first. In other words, here's what she would say this about a lot of things. Do hard things first. Do them first, get them out of the way, and then you can enjoy things. Do the thing that's good for you that you don't really want to do. Do that first and get it done. And if we, and some of you were raised like this, if we ever wanted seconds, and if we even dreamt of having dessert, the answer was always, first, eat your vegetables. First, eat your vegetables. Because my mama didn't want to raise no fools. She wanted to raise kids who understood things like diligence and initiative and hard work and how to do something that we don't really want to do if it's good for us. And one of the more interesting and frankly kind of the sadder characters in the book of Proverbs, and there are a lot of interesting characters we meet in the book of Proverbs, but one of them is called the sluggard. The sluggard, which, as you can probably figure out, is not a compliment. This is not a compliment. You know what a slug is, right? A slug is that slimy, snail-like creature, no shell, no spine, kind of goes through life at the breathtaking pace of an inch per hour. You know what I'm talking about? You know what the slug said when he climbed up on the back of a turtle? Whee! I was wondering if that would land. Okay, thank you. Courtesy laughs. So the sage, this wise person that we meet who teaches us in the book of Proverbs, one day he says he's out for a walk and he passes the farm or the vineyard of a sluggard and he makes this observation. Proverbs 24. I went past the field of a sluggard, past the vineyard of someone who has no sense. Now, this is really typical of the kind of parallelism that we see always in the book of Proverbs, where the way the Proverbs teach is through pairs of lines kind of set up against each other. Ancient Hebrew poetry didn't rhyme with words, they rhymed ideas. They would pair up ideas. And so here, these two ideas are being paired together. The farm, the vineyard, and a sluggard is equated with somebody who has no sense. And that word sense is actually the Hebrew word lab, which is the word for a person's inner self. It's often translated their heart. It's your heart, it's your mind, your thoughts, your understanding, and then metaphorically, like your resolve, your courage, your passion. It's that thing in here that you try to wake up every once in a while, like, come on, let's get this done. And however we translate lab in this context, what the sage is saying as he walks past this guy's farm/vineyard is something is essential is missing in the cavity of this guy's chest. He's got no lab. There's something absent in him. And so he's walking by and the place is a mess. The cat seriously did not have his act together. And here's what he observes. Thorns had come up everywhere. The ground was covered with weeds. Now, the assumption here is that this is crowding out his crops. This is growing up in his field or in his vineyard so the food can't grow. And the stone wall, which should be there to protect the crops from stray animals, it is totally in ruins. In other words, this guy isn't just a slob. This isn't just about being a slob. It's like his lawn is a mess, his grass is overgrown, his bushes need trimming. What an eyesore. I'm going to complain to the HOA. That is not what's going on in this proverb. This is this guy's livelihood. This is his livelihood. This is his ability to feed himself and feed his family. This guy is doing something now that is going to cause him great pain in the future. And so the sage says, so I applied my heart. I applied my lab to what I deserved, which is what wise people do. Wise people are always applying their heart. They're applying their heart to things. They're looking, they're pondering, they're thinking about things, and they're always taking the time to absorb a lesson. What do I learn from this? What can I learn from this? What can I learn not from my own field, but from another guy's field? This isn't even his field. He's looking at another guy's field saying, what lesson do I need to learn from that guy's field? And here's the lesson that he derives from it. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. It's like, how does this happen to a person? How does this happen to a person? And the genius observation of our sage is, it happens little by little. That's how it happens. It didn't happen all overnight. It didn't happen noticeably. It happened little by little, one little act of neglect at a time, and then all of a sudden. And poverty will come upon you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. In other words, there is a cumulative effect, and here's what he's observing. There's a cumulative effect to acts of neglect over a long period of time. The arrival of poverty, the arrival of scarcity, the arrival of, the arrival of, I didn't want that to happen. The arrival of consequences, it seems like it's all of a sudden, it's unexpected. It's like a bandit that snuck up on you. All of a sudden, it seems like, I don't understand where this is coming from. I don't understand why this is happening all of a sudden. Everything was fine. Everything was fine. How did this happen all of a sudden? I know I've been working a lot overtime, and we've been really busy, not really noticing how things are going with my marriage or with my kids. And all of a sudden, my wife left me a note. Where did that come from, John? I don't understand that. I don't understand. We were fine. Yeah, we've been heading off in all kinds of directions as a family. I mean, we're busy. We got little kids. They're involved in every imaginable thing, club this and whatever that. And so, I haven't had a date with my husband since we were married, but who dates their husband? We dated before we got married. Why would we date now and all of a sudden there is no marriage left? I haven't really taken care of my health in ever. But the doctor said I was fine. The test said I was fine. And all of a sudden, we've been living without financial margin, I know, for years. But we've made it work. We don't have a budget, but we made it work. We always made it work. And now, all of a sudden, everything's crashing in. Why is this happening now? And the sage says, listen, There was nothing all of a sudden about it. It happened little by little, and the sluggard is deceived by the smallness of his surrenders. It's just a little nap. It's just like, chill, bro. I can work tomorrow. Like, what are you all so upset for? It's just a nap. And Proverbs points out 3 character defects that afflict the sluggard and that potentially affect all of us because, let's be honest, we all have an inner sluggard. Even if we aren't fully characterized by, like, we are selectively sluggards, right? And so we all have a little bit of this. And here are 3 character defects that afflict the sluggard. First of all, the sluggard doesn't start things that he or she needs to start. Doesn't start things. It just goes like this. Hey, just a little sleep. A little slumber, a little folding. It's the classic art of procrastination, right? Any procrastinators in your room, don't need to raise your hand. Like, it's like, I still got time. Like, why are you so upset about it? I'll get to it. It's tomorrow, I'll jump on it. What difference does it make if I do it today? Now, experts, this is fun, in the field of like getting stuff done, experts in that field say that it's actually at the start of things that our minds create for us the most resistance. It's at the very beginning that we meet the most resistance, that our minds battle us the most, that inertia causes the most resistance. There's an article in Harvard Business Review a few years back, and I was reading, I was like, oh my gosh, that is so true, that it's at the start of a thing. The start of anything, really, that your mind resists and puts up the biggest fight and argues with you most, and then moments after you actually begin, moments after you begin, our minds just shut up. They just stop. They stop arguing. So it's like early in the morning and you're going to get up and go to the gym, you're going to work out, and the alarm goes off and you're like, I don't want to go today. I'm still tired. Don't want to get out of bed. It's so comfortable here. I didn't get enough sleep. And so your mind is battling. But here's the thing. And some of you have never pushed past that battle, and so you don't even know what it looks like on the other side. But some of you have, and you know that this is what happens. As soon as you start, like the feet pull out and land on the floor and you pull up your gym clothes, and you start to walk out the door, your mind just goes, well, I guess we're working out now. And it just gives up. Like, it stops fighting you and it leaves you alone. It does not fight you the rest of the day like it did while you were laying in bed, does it? No, it doesn't. And it's so true when you think about it. It's true with any habit, with any activity. The starting of it is the little piece that actually matters most, where the greatest resistance is. And once you begin and the ball is in motion, it's almost like the resistance just vanishes. But the sluggard never seems to win that early battle for his mind. Never seems to be able to get past that initial hurdle. The sluggard doesn't start things. The other thing the proverb says is the sluggard doesn't finish things. Here's a great proverb. The lazy do not roast their game, but the diligent feed on the riches of the hunt. In other words, even when they do finally get off the couch because they're hungry and they know they have to get something to eat, and they get after it, they end up failing to finish. I don't know if this has ever been you, but you know somebody, right? That even when you finally started to do something, you failed at roasting their game or roasting the prey that they caught so that the meat doesn't spoil. In other words, what they end up wasting whatever progress that they had achieved, and it's such a foolish move. But you've seen it before. You've seen somebody who got to the 5-yard line or even the 1-yard line and then lacked the resolve to get it all the way across, right? Now, Proverbs consistently juxtaposes the sluggard with this person right here, the diligent person, the diligent. And it's kind of interesting to me, the Hebrew word for diligent is actually the word for sharp, like a knife or a blade that's sharp. In other words, a diligent person is someone who, metaphorically, they cut through, right? They cut through the resistance. They cut through all the nonsense. They cut through the fog. They cut through the excuses. They're determined. They're focused. And the diligent person, this proverb says, they end up maximizing their resources because they make full use of what they have. They may not have everything, but they are not going to waste what they have. They are going to make the most of what they have. The sluggard doesn't start things. The sluggard doesn't finish things. And the third thing is the sluggard doesn't face things. The sluggard doesn't actually face things. Like all of us, the sluggard has a story. The sluggard has a story, a reason, an excuse for everything. and we all do. And our inner selective sluggard does as well. And so I love this proverb. Let's go back up. This one here. The sluggard says, "There's a lion outside. I'll be killed in the public square." Now, a lot of the Proverbs are like these caricatures. They're these comic hyperboles. This is one of them. It happens very often because it's kind of ridiculous. Like nobody ever said, "I can't sow my field. There are lions out there. I might get killed," right? No one ever says, "I can't go looking for a job. I might get killed by a lion in the street." It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous excuse. And that's kind of the point of this Proverbs, because the sage is mocking like all of our made up excuses that we have for our neglect and our procrastination and our selective sluggardliness. But we all have excuses, we all have stories, and they make sense about why this is not the time to act or why I can't do it right now, and we believe our stories. And so here's the next one that I think is great. A sluggard is wiser in his own eyes. Super smart than 7 people who answer discreetly. In other words, 7 people who actually are wise. Which is why, by the way, this can be a really difficult thing to see in the mirror. This can be a difficult thing to see in the mirror because someone who's really skilled at avoiding the hard, the thing you have to do, even selectively, the shortcuts, the hacks we try, the chasing fantasies, another scheme, another plan, we tend to think of ourselves as quite clever at the time, don't we? Like we've got it hacked, we've got it figured out, and when that one fails, we just have another idea. And as a result, we don't face things. We don't face some things that we need to face about ourselves, about our own character defects, about our contributions to the things that we keep getting, and the outcomes that we're getting themselves. We struggle to face things honestly. Sluggards, they don't start when they need to start. They often don't finish when they need to finish, and they don't face what they need to face. And so the wise sage of Proverbs has some surprising advice to the sluggard in all of us. He says, what you really need to do, it's like, well, what's our next step? Well, what you really need to do is you need to go visit the Ant Academy. The Ant Academy goes, yeah, that's what you need to go check out. He says here, go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be hokmah, be wise. Consider its ways, or literally its path. Now, last week we talked really briefly about this idea called the path principle, which is ubiquitous throughout the book of Proverbs. It comes up over and over and over again. It might be the most repeated idea in the book of Proverbs. And it's the idea that our lives are paths, and the decisions we make are steps along a path, and that path has a destination, and you should look out over the long arc of the path that you're on, because that's where you're going. And so it's this idea, and it's like, so the ant, wait a minute, the ant has a path? So this is a path, like, yeah, the way she does it, the way she goes about her work, her diligence, that's a path. That's a path that someone can take. So take a lesson from the path of the ant and gain yourself some hokmah. So like, okay, so what's the secret of the ant? What lessons do we need to learn from the ant? And the first one is this. It has no commander and no overseer or ruler. It has no foreman. It has no manager. It has self-motivation. In other words, it doesn't have somebody standing over it all day going, don't forget, like nagging it, reminding it, you've been sleeping for 15 minutes now, doesn't have any of that. Instead, it's internally motivated. It has the sense, the laid, if you will, to do what it needs to do. The ant has self-motivation, and the ant has delayed gratification. Look at this. And yet, no commander, no overseer, no one telling what to do, nagging it, prodding it on, but it stores up its provisions in summer, and it gathers its food at harvest. Delayed gratification, this lesson has to do with something called the seasonality of life. The seasonality of life, and this is such a big deal, that in much of life, including where you're at right now in life, there is a time and there is a season for certain appropriate engagements, and if you miss that season and you miss that time, you don't get it back. In fact, here's a great proverb right here. Proverbs 24 says, sluggards do not plow in season. They don't plow when it's time to plow, so at harvest time they look but find nothing. In other words, there is a time for plowing, and there's a time for sowing. And that time usually comes when you still have food from the last harvest. But if you miss that time and you wake up when the food's all gone and the harvest is almost here and say, well, I'm on it now. Let's get going. I'm ready to make some food. Let's make some food. And you're so motivated, it's too late. It's too late. And you're like, but that's not fair. I know, it's not fair. But it's true. There is a seasonality of life. It is the law of the farm, and you cannot cram on the farm. There is a seasonality to parenting. We've talked about this a number of times. The seasons of discipline, and then training, and then coaching, and then friending. There's a way that this actually works. There's a seasonality to it, and if you miss those seasons and try to cram it all in when they're 16 and losing it, it will not work for you. That does not actually work, and you will look for the harvest and find nothing, and it's sad. And it's true. There's a seasonality to marriage. There's a seasonality to laying the foundation in the early years, and unfortunately, it overlaps with the years of having kids, right? So those two things are overlapping at the same time, and so many young parents say, well, first we focus on the kids, and then when they're gone, then we'll focus on our marriage. There are very, very few marriages that can sustain 18 years of neglect. And so what happens is they reach the end of the we're raising our kids season, and they discover they don't have a marriage. There's no marriage left. There is a seasonality to laying that foundation. There's a seasonality to caring for your health. And it is not the point in time when you start really caring about your health. There's a seasonality for saving for the future, and it does not match up with the season that you really want to have savings. There is a seasonality to your 20s. In fact, there's a book called The Defining Decade by Meg Jay. Meg Jay is a psychologist and a developmental expert who focuses primarily on millennials and Gen Z. And she writes in her book that she is as convinced as ever that the 20s really are the defining decade. The defining decade, the decisions that you make or fail to make, the decisions you make or don't make in your 20s really do end up defining the rest of your life. And it turns out you can't go back and undo or redo them. The things that matter most happen at the time you care the least. Is that fair? No. Is it true? Yes, it is. There is a seasonality to life, and this is our problem with delayed gratification. This is our problem with delayed gratification because your future self, here's the problem. Your future self is really going to want to harvest. It really is. It's going to be hungry. It's going to have needs. Your future self is going to want to have a great relationship with your kids. In your 50s and 60s, your future self is going to want to have a great relationship with the spouse, with the one that brought you to the dance. Your future self is going to want to have good health. Your future self is going to want your health span to match your lifespan and not fall 20 years shy of it. Your future self is going to want deep, lasting friendships. It's going to want someone to help it move. Your future self is going to want things from your present self that at this point it will be too late for it to go out and get. Things that your present self doesn't really feel like it needs right now or cares all that much about it because you still have some grain left over from the last harvest. And delayed gratification requires you to do something now that your future self will thank you for. Delayed gratification requires you to do something now that your future self will look back and say, hey, thanks, 20-year-old me. I am so glad you started to put that little bit of money away so many years ago. I'm so glad you started taking care of your health. I'm so glad you started thinking about your sexuality and how you were treating your body. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And the sage says, man, the ant gets it. We don't get it, but the ant gets it. Her ways are wise. Her ways work with chokmah. They're in sync with the patterns of long arc, cause and effect that are built into life with the seasonality of life. And so the ant is able to do what it needs to do right now, what needs to be done, so that its future ant self will have what it wants and needs. Smart ant. I should learn some lessons from that ant. And not only does the ant do something, the ant actually does the right things. It does effective action, not just anything, but the right things, the smart things. It stores when it's important to store. It gathers when it's important to gather. It does the thing in this season that is the thing that needs to be done. And the way that the ant goes about doing it just might be the secret to the ant's genius. Because the lesson of the ant, it turns out, is really, really similar to the lesson of the sluggard. The ant builds up her world in the same way the sluggard's world falls apart, little by little. That's how the ant builds up her world, the same way the sluggard's world falls apart. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these. Have you ever seen an ant farm? I don't even know if they do these anymore. Have these been outlawed? They probably have, like everything has. And if you ever had one, you know how it works. Like when you first get it, like the sand's all settled and the ants are like asleep and they don't know what's going on. And nothing seems to at all happen at first. And then, little by little, right? One ant at a time, one tiny little grain at a time, one tiny little ant step at a time. They build like this underground city, and it's if you've ever seen this happen. And here's the law of little by little. Little things done for a long time produce large results. That's the law of little. Little by little. Little things, tiny little things that are done for a long time actually produce large results. There is a cumulative effect to tiny little steps taken over a long time steadily. There's a cumulative effect, and though no single grain of sand that was either carried or maybe not carried, one that was dropped or an ant that just didn't care for a second, no single grain of sand seems to make any little difference at all, does it? But little things done steadily for a long time produce large results. And so, for example, sitting down at the piano for your first time ever and playing for like 30 minutes, no value. Seriously, there's like zero value to that. Sitting down for a few minutes a day for a year, for 5 years, for 10 years, huge cumulative value, huge value, right? Exercising a few minutes a day for 5 days a week for like a year or 5 years or a lifetime, huge cumulative value financially. Saving a little bit month by month when you're young, starting out when you're very young, saving little by little, month after month, year after year, huge cumulative value. Disciplining and training your kids. When is the season to be laying that foundation? Eating dinner together as a family. Huge value. Relationally, carving out time to build deep relationships and friendships over years of time. Huge cumulative value. Spending time with your spouse when you don't feel like you desperately need it. Having dates when you still like each other before it's all come apart. Going for walks away from the kids. Having short conversations with each other. Huge cumulative value. Little bits of time invested steadily over a long period of time has cumulative value. And we all know this. We all know this. Nobody in the room is saying, I had no idea. I'm looking at you. Not a single person stopped and started writing that down. Like, whoa, tell me the thing about money again. A little bit when I'm young, there should be books about this kind of stuff. There are. We all know it, right? We all know this, and yet we are constantly being deceived by the exact opposite of little by little. The enemy of the law of little is the lie of all or nothing. The lie of all or nothing says, $100, $100 a month, saving $100, that's nothing. I need that $100 now. If I can't save thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, what difference does it make? I might as well spend it when I need it. 6 months to lose 30 pounds? That's ridiculous. Changing my lifestyle just to lose, I can't wait that long. Swimsuit season is almost here. So it's like the crash diet, the get-rich scheme, the chasing fantasies, the go big or go home, all in high stakes, grand gestures, right? And so it's like, I realize I come to a point in my 50s when my kids are getting a little older and I realize we have no connection as a family. They don't like to be around each other. They don't like to be with us. And so I come home one day and announce the family vacation. We are going away for 7 days and we're just going to be alone, stuck with each other, and we're going to like it and we're going to bond. And so we try to cram all that we've been losing little by little into some high risk, low reward grand gesture. It happens all the time. These gambles that we take to try to make up for what we lost little by little, and it never works. Don't get me wrong. Grand gestures are great accompaniments and supplements to little by little. If you've been doing little by little, grand gestures are wonderful. But if you've been neglecting little by little for 10 years in your marriage and you come home with some grand gesture, it's out of tune, right? It's tone deaf. It's like, what are you even doing right now? I don't even like being around you. This is the problem with all or nothing thinking. It's always little or nothing. All or nothing, go big or go home thinking. It's exactly what James Clear in his book, Atomic Habits, this fantastic book, a lot of you have read it, is talking about, I love the subtitle of the book, Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results. Tiny changes, remarkable results. And he makes a case in this book for something he calls tiny gains. Just tiny gains. Stop thinking so big. Tiny gains. And he makes an argument for 1% improvements. Just 1% improvements day after day after day taken steadily. And he says that if you were to make a 1% improvement, say in any area of your life, 1% better for 365 days equals almost 40% better, right? 1% worse over the same period of time brings you near to zero, though, of course, you mathematicians know you will never actually reach zero, right? But it's like that's the tiny gains thing. And consistently, the law of little by little crushes the lie of all or nothing thinking. The law of little by little crushes all or nothing every time. Losing weight with healthy diet and lifestyle change and exercise crushes the fad diet all the time. Saving week after week. Little by little, year after year, crushes the get-rich-quick schemes. A few nights of dinner together as a family crushes the family vacation. It kills it. Studying daily for a test you have coming up. Anyone who knows how the brain works will tell you that crushes the slam and cram method. It will beat it out every time. It's the lesson from the ant. The law of little by little. That little things done over a long time, they produce large results. There is a cumulative value in the tiny little things that we build into our lives that are the right things to do. The tiny little things done steadily over a long period of time. And as the sluggard discovers, there is a cumulative effect to our little acts of neglect as well. There's a cumulative effect to our little acts of neglect as well. The little bit of sleep, the little slumber, the little folding of the hands, the little nap. There's a cumulative effect to everything. The law of little by little is always at work. It's just built into how God made things. It's built into Hokmah. It is either working for us or against us, but it is always working. It is the way or the path of the ant. So, let's bring it home. Let's bring it home and apply it. Like, what are we going to learn from the ant before we move on? Let's ask ourselves a few questions. The first question is this. In what area or areas of your life have you maybe taken a nap? I'm not saying you're a sluggard, but maybe you're a selective sluggard, okay? Like, what areas have you just kind of drifted a little bit and you didn't even mean to? What area of your life have you been letting things go, just letting some weeds grow in your life? So it's like, hey, I'm in my 20s, I'm in my early 30s, I'm still young. I don't have to worry about stuff yet. I got plenty of time to get serious with my life. The kids are still little. There's time. I don't have to worry about that yet. I know I got a lot of debt. I don't even like to think about it. I have a mountain of debt so high above me, I don't even know where to begin. I know I should probably take better care of my health. I need to eat, exercise and eat well, but I still feel okay. I feel fine. I know, like, spiritually or vocationally or emotionally or relationally, with friendships, with your marriage. I know my marriage isn't great, but it's not that bad yet. And it's like little by little, there are thorns and weeds growing in a field in your life. What area of your life, and maybe it's been on your mind the whole time I'm talking, it's like, oh, he's talking about that thing right now, isn't it? What is that area for you? What is one of those areas for you? And here's another question, not necessarily related, but certainly related. Do you know what season you're in? It's kind of a different question, right? Hey, do you know what season this is? Do you actually know what the essential deposit or the contribution of this season of your life is all about? What this season is like, what really should you be doing? Do you know what it is that you must be sowing right now, or storing right now, or doing right now, or reaping right now, so that your future self will thank you? There is a seasonality of life. There's a seasonality to every season of life. Are you doing in this season what must be done now so that you will have the harvest that you hope to have later? And by the way, if you don't know what the answer is, like, I don't really know, because how do we? We don't know what we don't know. I've never been through this season on the other side of it yet. How would I know what this season is for if you don't know what it is? Ask someone. This is something wise people do always. Ask someone who's wise. Ask someone who's wise, who is further down the road than you. Not your buddy, not your friend, somebody who perhaps is in a season similar to the future self you're looking at. Like, think about that person and say, hey, looking back on my season, what are you either grateful for your younger self for doing or wish your younger self had done? What season should I be paying attention to right now? And one last question, and it's an important one. What tiny step, not grand gesture, I'm talking, I'll get it all fixed today. No, you won't. But maybe you could take a tiny step. What tiny step can you take in one area of your life this week? Will you write it down? Will you make a decision to do it? I'm going to leave work at 5:30 and be home for dinner at 6 p.m. 5 times this, 3. Okay, one time this week, we're going to have dinner. Your kids won't even see what's coming. Like, what are we doing right now? We're going to sit down like one time this week. We're going to make it happen. I'm going to put my kids to bed and pray with them 3 times this week. I'm going to put them to bed, and I'm going to sit and pray. They won't even, like, what are you doing in my room right now? We're doing this thing. I'm praying for you. But John, I don't really feel comfortable praying out loud. Your kids are kids. They don't know the difference. They think you're amazing. Just pray. Just talk to God about them. I'm going to spend my first 5 minutes after work catching up with my spouse. Before we start something or check my email or my Instagram or start, we're just going to talk for 5 minutes. 5 minutes, not 3 hours. Just going to talk for a couple minutes and catch up before anything else happens. I'm going to wake up 3 times this week and open up the book of Proverbs and read it. I set this goal last week. I was going to do it every day this week, and I'm not doing it every day, but hey, I can maybe do it 3 days. I bet I can do that. I can do 3 times where I just read that chapter. I can do that. I'm going to go for a walk around the block. Not a 5-mile walk, not a 3-mile. I'm going to go for a walk around the block a few times this week. And hey, here's the thought. I'm going to do it with my spouse, and we're going to do the talking together and the walking at the same time. So you're habit stacking now. That's what James Clear talks about. Like, I'm getting 2 of my habits in at the same time. And here are the nights that we're going to do that. I'm going to go for a walk, just a short little walk. That's all I'm going to do. Tiny steps, tiny steps. What goal or dream have you been thinking about lately? You've been kind of chewing on something, on starting it, and you can't accomplish it all at once. And it feels imposing, and you're waiting for inspiration, and you're waiting for a miracle. What tiny step, tiny, tiny little step can you take this week, and then the next week, and then the next week? And of course, one tiny step that we can all take is to come back and join us next weekend, because Mama says you need to be here for part 3 of our series. We're going to talk about yet another foundational principle to wisdom, living the kind of life that your future self will thank you for. But the law of little by little says little things done for a long time produce large results. There is a cumulative effect to our little acts of neglect over the course, the long haul of our lives. All of a sudden is always little by little. It's the lesson of the sluggard, but the lesson of the ant is there is a cumulative value, a cumulative positive value to those tiny little steps taken consistently and steadily over a long period of time. And I hope and pray that we will all leverage this law in our favor for this next week. Let me pray for us. Heavenly Father, I once again just thank you for wisdom. Thank you that you want us to live our lives better. You want us to live our lives in alignment with Hokmah, with just how things work. You want that for us all, and you want to get our attention, and we want to listen. And so I want to thank you for that, and I want to pray for all of us, pray for myself, that you will give each of us the ears to hear what we needed to hear, and the grace to take it inside of ourselves and not feel shame and not kick ourselves, the grace to take it inside ourselves, the wisdom to know what to do with it in this moment, in this season of our lives, and then the courage and the strength to actually do it, to take that next tiny step. I pray that for myself. I pray that for my friends. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, thanks so much, John, and thanks everybody for being here today. Great diving into this next part of the series. And as we're wrapping up, I wanted to highlight actually something that we're just a few days away from, and it is our What is the Bible seminar. And so we quickly mentioned this a little bit earlier on, but this is coming up this upcoming Friday night and Saturday morning. It's going to be a great, speaking of tiny next steps that we can take, a great next step to take. We're going to be digging into really kind of how the Bible came together, what it is, a lot of great content. And we're also going to have dinner Friday night. Saturday morning, we'll have bagels and coffee. If you need childcare, we'll take care of that as well. But if you haven't signed up yet, you're a sluggard. No, now actually is the time to do that. And so if you're going, you know what, I want to take that next step, that's going to be a great thing to be a part of. You can grab your flyer, you can scan the QR code, and you can get all dialed in there. And that's just coming up in a few days. But as we are winding down right now, in just a moment, our guest services team members are going to be at the door, and they'll take anything from you that you want to leave behind, which maybe that summer life group brochure. You already marked a group or two that you want to be a part of. You can leave that behind. Connect card, love to hear from everybody, and you can also drop offering envelopes or really anything you want to recycle there at the door. But thanks again for being with us this weekend, and I want to invite you back to be with us for part 3 of Mama Didn't Raise No Fool this upcoming weekend. Thanks so much, everybody.